today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. On the heels of her second fight with Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano took to her social media and stated, "What I'm happiest about is that we all as women are slowly but surely getting the opportunities and we're taking full advantage of them. I personally tune in when any of the girls fight. That's because we all do it for the same cause, women's boxing. Michaela Mayer and Sandy Ryan fought in an incredible fight that had me jumping out of my seat. Gabby Fundora totally killed it. She's the future for sure. Alicia Baumgartner showed incredible sharpness in a recent fight against Pursoon. Claressa Shields totally dominated in her last fight and got the stoppage. Katie Taylor and I didn't play against each other. We threw down Shea Green, got strapped on our huge card. Love each other or not, we're doing our thing every chance we get to build the sport, and that is growth."
In spite of the defeat, the controversial outcome, Amanda kept it classy, kept it gracious, as she often does. Setting a good example, though for some other fighters, it's really just another chapter in the same book. Claressa Shields posted, "Money is money and skills are skills. My skills are the reason I have 2 Olympic gold medals and 15 world titles. Being ranked number 1 pound for pound is all that matters to me. I don't have close fights. I don't lose in boxing. I fight the best. There are levels." Yeah, her skills are why she has 2 Olympic gold medals, but her attitude is why nobody cares. So do you think it's a coincidence that Claressa posts this the same weekend that Katie and Amanda are fighting? This is a jab. This is a shot. This is a shot at the both of them. That they've had 2 fights and both of them were close. That Amanda lost, even though some people thought she won. Some people thought it was a close fight. What is obvious from Claressa Shields' post is that she's taking a shot at both Katie and Amanda, and a Twitter user that goes by the name Almighty Fatboy noticed, saying, "You really hate Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor." To which Claressa replied, "I love them, actually." Who does she expect to believe that? It's one of those things to where maybe they want to see you do well, but not doing better than they're doing. That's it. Because when she says that money is money and skills are skills, she's acknowledging that both Katie and Amanda make far more money than she does, but she thinks she's more skilled than they are. That's why she says she doesn't have close fights. That's why she highlights that she's still unbeaten, unlike some other fighters. That's a shot at Katie just as much as it's a shot at Amanda. And the difference is, when Claressa's fighting Vanessa Joanese or Marisela Cornejo, you're not going to see Katie Taylor take to her social media and start carrying on about her gold medal or how much money she's made or how many fighters she's beat. Her resume. Quite honestly, unless Katie Taylor has a fight signed, you're likely not going to hear or see much from her and Amanda. Katie's a very private person in between fights. And Amanda, while she's on social media more frequently than Katie, all she says are good things about the other fighters. She never tries to steal their thunder or belittle them and what they're doing to advance herself. You never see Amanda do it, but with Claressa, Amanda has to notice. 2 girls can't fight on any given weekend without Claressa Shields trying to make it about herself. Is that narcissism? Or an inferiority complex that Claressa Shields needs constant validation at all times? Or is it a bit of both? Is that possible? Is it possible for a narcissist to be as insecure as Claressa's insecure? Because that's what that is. She's insecure. No one asked you about your 2 gold medals or your skills. The talk of the town this weekend was Katie and Amanda, and you just want to shift the focus off of them to glorify yourself. My skills this, my skills that. I'm gonna say it because nobody else will. Nobody in the media, none of the pundits, that Claressa's not fighting the same caliber of fighters that Katie and Amanda are fighting. Are you kidding me? Did you see the last girl she fought? Are we supposed to pretend that she's as good as a Chantel Cameron and Amanda Serrano or Katie Taylor? Are you joking? Marisela Cornejo, Vanessa Joanese, this is what you want to hold up side by side to whose resume? Katie's? Katie fought Chantel Cameron in her last fight and Amanda Serrano in the one after that. Are you joking? We've had this conversation already. Even more astounding is the collective gaslighting from the media. Well, they don't want to ruffle any feathers. They don't want to incur Claressa Shields' wrath.
Nobody looks at a Marisela Cornejo or a Vanessa Joanese and really thinks to themselves, yeah, this is as good as the girls that Katie's fighting. This is as good as the girls that Amanda or Michaela,
Sandy,
Alicia, Sinicia, Gabriella.
Nobody looks at those girls that Claressa's fighting and really thinks to themselves, yeah, this is on par with the kind of girls everybody else is fighting. They know it's not.
They just don't say it openly because they don't want to get drawn into an argument with Claressa. That's all it is. Her toxic attitude elicits that silence.
The media chooses to stay silent, which enables her delusions of grandeur.
And while I think Amanda notices that Claressa's regularly taking shots at her, she chooses to kill her with kindness.
Because she's gracious. But I'm not.
Your quality of competition is not as good as theirs. That's why you're so dominant. You're competing in weaker divisions than they are, with less people in them.
That's why you're up there at 175 worrying about a 140-pounder.
Really, a 135-pounder.
Right.
And I don't think Claressa's ever going to go on to make the kind of money that Amanda and Katie make, not just because of where she campaigns, but because of her attitude. She is easily one of the most unlikable people in all of boxing, not just women's boxing.
All of boxing.
But go polish your 2 gold medals you're always talking about, if that makes you feel better. In men's lightweight news, reactions are still pouring in to Tevin Farmer's post-fight accusation that there was no VADA testing for his fight with William Zepeda. Veteran boxing scribe Jake Donovan said, "Drug testing has been the staple of Riyadh season shows so far. A shame that Golden Boy's first venture was limited to just the main event in this regard. Fighter safety should never be a budgetary issue, but for Oscar De La Hoya it was, and I don't see as many people laying into him as they like to lay into Eddie Hearn,
who pays more for anti-doping testing than anybody else in the business."
Seems that Victor Conti, who's normally very Johnny on the spot when it comes to this kind of stuff, it took him about a day or so to find out.
He's piping up now.
Tevin Farmer's appalling revelation after the William Zepeda loss, "Why weren't me and Zepeda drug tested?" He wrote, "Why weren't me and Zepeda drug tested? I asked multiple times in the locker room before we fought," stating how he never got the reason behind no drug testing. He further revealed that the promoters told him there would be tests after the fight, but still no tests. Despite the fight being a title fight sanctioned by the WBC, Oscar De La Hoya and Turki El Sheikh should answer these questions. "In my opinion, boxing is a dangerous sport, and zero testing at the elite level is simply unacceptable. I believe the lack of transparency about drug testing requires boxers like Farmer to stand up and speak out. The boxers need to protect their own health and safety, because oftentimes the boxing promoters do not consider drug testing as part of their budget."
Tevin Farmer claimed that it was part of the contract, that there would be anti-doping testing. If there wasn't, does that constitute a breach? And if there is a breach, is Tevin going to pursue it?
How far is he willing to go with all of this, since he is now speaking out? Most are just going to write it off as a case of sour grapes, but it does stand to reason that if he was told there was going to be anti-doping testing and it wasn't, well, that's going to rub him the wrong way.
What about the Stevenson fight?
The Shakur Stevenson versus William Zepeda fight that will go down presumably next year. There may not have been anti-doping testing for the Farmer fight, but I've no doubts that there will be for the Stevenson fight, as Stevenson's people have got more juice than, say, Tevin Farmer's to make sure there's anti-doping testing. Will William Zepeda be able to stay in character, if there is? And if this is what it all boils down to, will Oscar De La Hoya still be willing to make the fight? Because he's been talking, he's been doing a lot of talking.
But when push comes to shove, will he make the fight?
This may put a very different complexion on all of this than what we originally thought. Is William Zepeda a dirty fighter? Frankly, in today's boxing landscape, the boxers themselves cannot afford to be naive, and you can't put anything past anyone, William Zepeda included. More famous, more well-known fighters than him have tested positive for banned substances. So it's not outside the realm of possibility that the reason this guy's a punching machine, the reason this guy's got so much output, is because he could be on something.
I don't care if that offends you.
Let it be some other fighter that you're not so high on, and I'm sure that you'll be standing on your soapbox pointing fingers.
Enough.
I'm just speculating. I'm just bouncing ideas around. That
For whatever reason, there was no anti-doping testing conducted in the Farmer fight, but I've no doubts there will be in the Stevenson fight. If Oscar even goes through with it. I'm not sure that he will. Shakur Stevenson has always had good representation, good management, and he's also represented by Matchroom now, so they're gonna make sure that either Drug Free Sport or VADA or somebody tests these fighters.
Oscar knows that.
Knowing that, will he still make this fight? The optics are gonna be pretty bad if he doesn't, as much as he's been shooting off at the mouth.
Tio's fighting a mental mind game with himself. Like, how can I get a commercial enough to get a Terrence Crawford fight? Because I think he really wants to fight Crawford. I think he really wants to fight Terrence Crawford. I know the Bud Buddies and the fans, y'all get so appalled when somebody wants to fight your Black Jesus, but he really wants to fight Terrence.
It's also a test to, like, he can't sell out the Hulu, man. Like, you got Shakur and Keyshawn even sold out where he's from. Tio just never been able to fill up the Hulu. So,
which is crazy because Tio
he had no identity.
Exciting. He's exciting to watch, though.
He is exciting. Yep, I agree.
He fight with swag. Like, what? Why can't they get him the pay-per-view? Tio not on pay-per-view yet is disgusting.
What fight deserved to be on pay-per-view, bro? Like, you complain about Tank and his meaningless pay-per-views, but then you want every other fighter to do meaningless pay-per-views. Which one is it?
It's a valid observation from Nestor Gibbs that anybody playing Teofimo the violin, because he hasn't been on pay-per-view yet, where Gervonta's been on pay-per-view and Ryan has been on pay-per-view, Devin,
Loma,
Kambosos in his own country 2 times, where Teofimo hasn't, where he hasn't been on pay-per-view yet. Who did he fight that made for a pay-per-view worthy fight? The closest would have had to have been Loma, but we know what the circumstances were. We were in the middle of the pandemic. There were no live gates. Everybody was strapped for cash in every industry.
everybody was hurting.
Hurting for money. Major companies needed bailouts just to survive the shutdown and the effect that it had. That would have been the most inopportune time to bill Teofimo's fight as a pay-per-view. So they didn't.
The Loma fight.
Now, the other fights that he had, you couldn't have built those fights as pay-per-views. What, the Kambosos fight? The Campos fight?
Could you imagine paying $75 to $80 for the Sandor Martin fight? The Jermaine Ortiz fight?
Ridiculous. But Two-Tone the Superstar feels that Teofimo should have been on pay-per-view already. Why? You weren't going to buy it.
Illegally streamed the undisputed heavyweight championship fight of the world. Well, guess what? Fire Stick Boys outside. Chilaquiles. What you thought this was?
I don't really want to put the guy on the spot, but advocating the Teofimo fight on pay-per-view coming from him
Him in particular.
who regularly advertises that he means to steal the pay-per-views, the vast majority of them, including the undisputed title fight between Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk. I mean, sheesh, if you didn't want to pay for that, you're not going to want to pay for anything, let alone Teofimo. So who was he supposed to fight on pay-per-view that Two-Tone would have bought it?
You were gonna pay $80 to see him fight Sandor Martin? $80 to watch him fight Jermaine Ortiz?
The Josh Taylor fight was a better fight than those fights, but I don't think Two-Tone would have paid $80 to see it. Not if you're turning your nose up at Fury versus Usyk.
Makes sense.
Make it make sense. The truth is that Teofimo doesn't belong on pay-per-view. No, not by himself. In fact, a lot of these young fighters don't belong on pay-per-view. So what are you really advocating for?
It's just like the other panelists said. Teofimo's all right, but he doesn't have a lot of marquee value, a lot of drawing power. He can't even sell out the Hulu theater.
His conditioning is fantastic. He's big for the weight class. But saying all of that, I still got Teofimo Lopez. I think Teofimo Lopez, if not for that horrible night with Kambosos, we're looking at Teofimo Lopez in the top 5 at pound for pound. He is an exceptional athlete with power, speed, ability to pull the trigger, counterpunch. I mean, he is a phenom when he's on. Problem is, when he's not on, you get a night like Kambosos. You get a night like Sandor Martin. You get a night like Claggett or Jermaine Ortiz. So that's the issue. He is so hot and cold, but man, when he's hot, he's molten lava.
I disagree with most of that. I disagree with Chris's evaluation of a Devin Haney versus Teofimo Lopez fight. I have Devin Haney beating Teofimo comfortably, but that is one fight that could get Teofimo on pay-per-view. His marquee value is not such
that he can stand alone, but he can be the other half of a big fight.
Yeah, by himself, he can't sell out the Hulu Theater.
Shakur draws more than he does in his hometown. Keyshawn Davis draws more than he does. Boots just did in Philly 2 times.
Teofimo doesn't draw like that to where he should have already been on pay-per-view. With who?
He needs the right dance partner. Enter Devin Haney, who's free right now, and so is Teofimo.
Devin beats him.
We've already had that conversation. When I hear Chris Algieri talk about Teofimo, you must be talking about the Teofimo from years ago. You must be talking about the Teofimo that was at 135, who seemed a much more dynamic fighter than the one at 140. Most of his showings at 140 have been lackluster.
So he had about 4 or 5 fights there?
The only performance he had where he showed a glimmer of his old self was the Josh Taylor fight, but context is key. Josh Taylor was coming off a controversial win that should have been a loss to Jack Catterall. That's one.
Josh Taylor was coming off an injury. Plantar fasciitis, I believe it was. That's why he didn't run it back with Jack right away. That's 2.
3. He hadn't fought in a year. There's a year in between the Jack Catterall fight and the Teofimo fight. So before you go falling out of your chair over how Teofimo looked in that fight with that fighter, look at the condition of that fighter.
Look at what the circumstances were. Why are people always looking at fighters with blinders on?
Most of Teofimo Lopez's 140-pound campaign, he's looked bang average. The Sandor Martin fight, the Jermaine Ortiz fight, the more recent Steve Claggett fight.
Most of his fights at that weight.
That if you're still talking about this kid like he's molten lava, you're just holding on to how he used to look and how he used to fight at 135 when he was big for 135. Not so big at 140.
And suddenly, not so dynamic.
How do you imagine he's gonna look if and when he moves up? Because I don't get the sense he's gonna unify the 140-pound division. It looks a lot like he's on his way to 147. And who at 147 do you think he beats? Could he beat the Karen Chukadzian that just fought Jaron Ennis? Could he beat Jaron Ennis? Emantis Stanionis, Brian Norman. Can he beat those guys? Maybe he can beat Mario Barrios. Maybe he can beat him, but that's it.
That's all.
Frankly, I think Devin would do to Teofimo what he already did to Regis Prograis. It's essentially the same fight, just with a somewhat younger fighter, but that has the same limitations.
I think Devin beats him.